talking Friday about the transition from Dada to Surrealism. And we were looking at a number of artists that were part of Dada Paris that had come from other Dada centers at the end of the war, 1919, 1920, arrived in Paris. And this becomes the core group of what turns into the Surrealist movement in 1924, when they gather around the poet André Breton, B-E-R-T-O-N, who writes a manifesto for Surrealism that's trying to get Dada artists away from being successful capitalists, right? He thinks they can become too commercial, and he wants to get them into something deeper. And that deeper aspect is getting to something that's truly important about the human condition. And for the Surrealist movement, this importance is to be mined, to be located, to be found in dream states based on Freud's idea of the subconscious. That by going into the dreams, you can, and being jarred away from the reality we can find insight into who we truly are as humans. And the connection between Dada and this is, I think, on one level, a sense of irrationality that we've talked about quite a bit with Dada. The idea of using found objects, for example, things you might just stumble upon, and making rubbings from them and joining those things together. That irrationality is a connection to the dream state in a way. It gets away from logical thinking, which gets in the way of, what do you want to say? It gets in the way of tapping into that primal nature of who we are, right? Our logic is hard to develop to allow us to get to that. The other thing that from Dada comes out of Dada, and is very important for Surrealism, is the unexpected juxtaposition of forms, right? So the nails on the flat iron, right? That divorce the objects from their true use, divorce you from the expected, force us into a new realm of a different kind of understanding. So these things feed into Surrealism, but we can't really call them Surrealist until 1924 when the term is finally coined, right? Dada Paris simply turns into the Surrealist movement, which is centered in Paris in the first decade of its existence, right? Man Ray, who we were looking at in his class, is best known as a photographer. And we were looking at another of these odd juxtapositions. In this case, the female body with the sound holes from a violin. Man Ray recognizing the relationship between the female form and the body of a stringed instrument, something that artists have seen forever. That curving form of the shoulders and the hips. And then giving it this title, the violinist Ang, the painter Ang, which gives homage to the artist who he's co-opting for this, which is the 19th century painter Ang, but also relates to this idea of hobby, that in many ways this was his lover Kiki, is indeed his hobby of sorts. And it points to something with both of these that we've talked a little bit about with Dada and Surrealism, but see again, is that there's something kind of sexist about it. There's something a little misogynist here. Women are heavily objectified in these movements. And in the grand scheme of things, both in Dada and Surrealism, there are far fewer women than there are in other art movements, say like the Impressionists going back a ways. Right? Although, because it's so avant-garde, I think they tend to be somewhat accepting of this testosterone involved in all of this, right? Man Ray is quite an experimenter when it comes to photography as well. And if you play back the constructivist lectures, online, the architects, you've seen that the early 20s are a time of great experimentation with photography as a medium. And what Man Ray is interested in doing is something very similar to what art was doing as a Dada artist, what Duchamp was doing as well, which is trying to make an art that isn't art, an anti-art. An art, for art and Duchamp, they're making paintings without a painter. And what Man Ray wants to do is to make photos without a camera. And so what he does is he simply develops, or he takes a piece of photosensitive film, right? Photosensitive paper. And when you buy photo, you probably don't know this, digital these days, but you buy a piece of photosensitive paper, it comes in a box covered up, right? Because as soon as the light hits, it's going to start to change, okay? And what you do in a dark room is you meter that light through a negative, similar to what you see on the right, and that will then expose parts of it depending on the brightness of the light that hits it, okay? And that's what dark environments do. What Man Ray is doing is he's taking this paper, right, it's fairly large, 8.5 by 11, he's taking it outside with him, and he's laying junk on it and exposing it to the sun. And that's it, just laying stuff on it, right? Sometimes he's taking pieces of glass that's cracked, so the cracks will make forms, but sometimes he's just laying things. So here he's got a piece of 16mm film, or maybe 35mm film, right? Movie film on the right. Those are not simply negatives of from a normal camera, but a piece of moving picture. And then a piece of paper on the lower left corner, and a gyroscope. You know what a gyroscope is, right? You spin the middle part of it, the thing stands up on its end, and it's what's inside of navigational systems in boats and in airplanes, and in image-stabilized cameras have a rudimentary form of a gyroscope. And it's basically the principle by which a bicycle doesn't fall over when you're riding it, because once you get a wheel spinning fast enough, it wants to stay on that beat, right? And this is why you can ride a two-wheel bike or even a unicycle, right? It's because once you get that spinning, it creates an amount of energy on that tangent that won't let it fall over this way, okay? Or it's the same as the top will spin, right? Just take a child's top, and let it go on right, and you can make it spin, or a quarter for that matter, right? Will spin. All those things are gyroscopic principles. And in this case, he alludes to the idea that a gyroscope will actually you can make it dance on a wire, right? Because it has such balance once that bit in the middle starts spinning. And what he does is he places that by simply scratching the plate that he lays down on top of its photosensitive film. So all the blacks are where it's exposed to the light. And laid the gyroscope on top of that and made it appear as if it's actually spinning when I don't think it is. He sort of plays with the exposure that way. Right? Again, this is all kind of Dada chance in a way, right? He's removing the hand of the artist on a certain level. Now the sun is doing it. The sun is exposing the paper. And on a certain degree, I think, at least at first, he probably has no idea how these things are going to come out. He doesn't know exactly what's going to happen in areas, like this area in here where it's been double or triple exposed. He has no idea exactly how it's going to come out. Dada element of chance, randomness, right, is a key element that again translates here into, well, this is pre-surrealism, and that is 1921. So it is still sort of Man Ray as a Dada artist. It again remains at the core of the surrealist movement. Okay. So this group that we're looking at, Max Ernst, Man Ray, are at the core of the surrealist movement when André Breton founds it in 1924 and writes a manifesto and defines what the movement is trying to do. And one of the things that Breton said that surrealism was all about was a particular artistic technique. And that technique is called automatism, which comes from the word automatic. And it comes from a psychotherapeutic idea of doing automatic writing, where you put the pen down and you just start to write without thinking about where you're going. Free writing, without even a theme. Writing free associations. Whatever comes in your head, you write it down as fast as you can, as your mind wanders. like free word association, right? Or looking at Rorschach symbols. The whole idea is that you get away from trying to answer specific questions and just letting your mind wander, and as it wanders, you find answers to things that you couldn't find because you've rationally thought your way out of it. It's very much about, but also those impulses, right, are supposed to, at least, in psychotherapy, are supposed to reveal elements of who you really are. You've probably seen this in dozens of movies. There's that really great early Saturday Night Live bit when Chevy Chase is interviewing Richard Pryor, and he's saying all these terribly racist things, and Richard Pryor keeps getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And then he says, "Sit, honky," right, back to Chevy Chase. It's just hilarious. But it's that free word association that reveals elements of your true character, right? So this technique, right, automatism, automatic writing or automatic painting, Breton said, expresses the true function of thought in the absence of control that is exerted by reason. The true function of thought, absent from the control exerted by reason. And when Freud sort of talked about the same idea back at the end of the 19th century, he says these things will allow us to have insight not only into who we are, but also into the subconscious. Right? What is going on beneath the surface? That which we tend to ignore, but often holds the answers to everything that makes us screwed up. Right? It's the subconscious. So Breton is reading Freud regularly and channeling those ideas into artistic practice. Right? And this is in the Surrealist Manifesto, right? And you can see why the Dada idea of chant is just morphs right into this. Right? Where before artists are just letting things fall down, Duchamp in the large glass, it's dust inside of it, or accidentally cracks this thing and he lights it again. This becomes sort of the basis for the idea of automatism, automatic painting, automatic writing. And one of the first artists to begin to adopt this is again, remember, this is all in Paris. This is André Masson. He's in your textbook, but he's also here in the Hirshhorn Gallery. He takes Breton's ideas and begins to practice automatic painting, automatism. And what he's doing is he's taking paint right from the tube and just squeezing it out onto the canvas. He's taking bottles of glue and pouring it onto the canvas. I have a detail coming up. Well, here, let's just get it up there. Where you can see that the canvas is mostly untreated. He's just making a mess of things. And then he's chucking stuff into the wet paint and into the wet glue. Sand, for example. Which, by the way, is probably inspired by Native American Indians who do sand paintings. Right? Borrowing those ideas. And you can see where this, it's not a big jump from here to Pollock, right? And certainly Pollock's a different, he's not really interested in Freud, but the idea of doing this is a way of getting to some kind of understanding of yourself that you couldn't have otherwise. It's just something that's strongly influential on him, eventually. And certainly abstract expressionism comes directly out of, I think, surrealism. Right? So he's doing automatic painting, just freely applying things. And he calls it his open start, Masson does. What he says he's going to do is that by doing this, he's going to step back and then look at it and say, what does it suggest to me? Right? So he starts openly, kind of like art dropping the pieces of paper back in 1914. But then he's going to go back in and say, that reminds me of something, and then try to push it in that direction. And do you guys ever do an open start project in the studio? Right? Where you just start putting lines down, and then you see where it's headed. I did that when I was in school, right? Yeah, I did it with like a Japanese brush with ink. You would just start to lay down lines, and then you would see what would happen with it. Well, That's exactly what Masson is doing. So he's laying these things down, and then eventually we'll see, oh, it's going somewhere, and he'll turn it into what he calls strollers. He doesn't mean child, infant, baby buggies, right? He means two people strolling, right? I'd love to know what the title was in French, if it was planeur, for example. But you can see that on a certain level, this has become now two people, a red one and a blue one, with a head and these bodies with legs down here. Even though they're very anamorphic, they're very nebulous is a better word. And you can see he's sort of bringing his feet down below as well. That he's been inspired by what happened randomly and was able then to turn that into something else, a channelist. Now, the bigger issue is not so much that, okay, what sort of great eternal truth did he arrive at here? I don't think he did, sort of the end of the work itself is not something you go like, oh, that's the meaning of life, or anything like that. But I think it's rather that it's a dialogue between him and the canvas, that he gets to channel in to see how things work and gets to sort of, analyze himself on a certain level. And it's not that he's coming up with great answers that mean anything, but the process itself is one that liberates him from rationality. So this is kind of a key point of surrealism, as Breton first defines it, is this idea of automatism as a way of revealing the subconscious, as a way of revealing things that you wouldn't have come, understandings, insights that you wouldn't have come to otherwise. We have a couple of these. I'll put the Hirshhorn. This one doesn't have the glue or anything, but it's paint that's been, again, freely applied to the canvas. Again, think of automatic writing, right? Automatic writing, you're just letting your mind go. You're writing down words and ideas, and they might not even be words. I guess it's kind of like speaking in tongues or something, right? You're just letting it flow. And then seeing where it goes, seeing how it all fits together. So in this case, the forms that he put down as he did these calligraphic lines, right? You can see how this doesn't necessarily have to fit it. He's just sort of blind contour drawings, but without the model, just letting the pen or the brush wander over the page, stepping back and seeing what do I want to add now? I'm going to add something here. And you get these amazingly beautiful sort of wandering lines. You start to see that wandering line here, right? That comes back and wraps around to this one. And he's just letting it happen. And then he goes to step back and says, okay, what is this? Okay, it's a rabbit. I can't find it either. He says, you see it? Upper right corner. It's here. Oh, sure enough, there he is.
Oh, yeah.
Running rabbit. Hey, thank you, Demetrius. I was looking at the bigger picture instead of the small details. Sure enough, there is a rabbit running off there on the right. Looks kind of like one of our dogs charging off leash or something. Yes, and then elements that then suggest landscape without suggesting landscape, right? You can see how with a lot of abstraction, this is so important, right, Yvonne? Your picture? Yeah, those lines that Dove does there, very similar, and really one of the ways people understand Arthur Dove is as a sort of an American offshoot of surrealism, at least in that period of his career, which is in the 30s, right? Or the 40s, but anyway, you get the idea. Right, so this is one direction in which it goes, and the idea, of course, is that through automatism for André Masson, who continues down this road, right, he will continue to do these kinds of pictures into the 40s, and use as a channel and make an avenue into the dream world, which is where Freud says, most of our answers really do lie, is in analyzing our dreams. That's where the rationality disappears, and we can discover, what we really think about things. What's really important, what we remember. Dolly's coming up soon enough. See, I don't care. I'm going to give him a bit of a short script. But we're going to look at another Spaniard first, because Dolly really is kind of linked to the game, right? Joan Miro, it's a man's name, right? It's not Joan. It's not like Joni Mitchell or something like that. He came from Barcelona, which was Picasso's hometown, and he arrived in Paris in 1920, which means he gets there in Paris prior to surrealism. And in fact, there's quite a few artists that are moving in surrealist directions before the manifesto was written, right? When Breton writes that manifesto, he's talking about what people are already doing, what he's seeing out there, what certain directions people are taking, and trying to pull them together and say, let's go this way. In fact, after 1924, Breton said that Joan Miro was the best. He was the most surrealist of anybody. Although you wouldn't see it first in his very early work. What happened was, he'd gone to Paris, 1919. He'd suffered this, 1920, he suffered a nervous breakdown. I don't know exactly why, but he goes back to a family farm, this family that had for generations, back in Spain, on the Red Mountain, Montreuil. And I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. But he goes there to recuperate. And while he's recuperating, he starts to paint. He had gone to Paris just to hang out, be part of the scene. He begins painting as an exercise at the family farm in Spain. And then he goes back to Paris. And he paints this as a reminder of that moment, of that period at the family farm in Spain. Right? So it's a relatively accurate depiction of the farm, but you'll notice that the perspective on the scene is flattened out. That some things don't seem to work. And then there's that disembodied red square on the right. But also the field on the left doesn't really seem to work. It staggers its way up. All of the ground seems as if it's flat, like the picture frame itself. And then there's some really strange and mysterious things going on. So that's some nice details here to show you of this. The red square that seems to exist flat on the surface of the canvas is in fact the leading edge of the coop, the bird coop, right? And you can see on the side on the right and on the back some of the actual lattice work that keeps the birds in the coop or the animals in the coop. But you'll notice, of course, the front of it's missing. It's all gone. But then we got bunny rabbits and chickens and other kinds of birds that are inside and outside of this cage. But he's painted it, excuse me, in a very abstract way so that it violates a sense of space. It has a sort of lack of rationality. And even the corner nails that seem to hold the coop in place also look as if he's put them there to hold a piece of red tape right onto the canvas. It almost looks like a painted tacks or something that hold it here. And his treatment of light and dark, the yellow and the shadows, for example, really kind of violates the idea of shading and three-dimensionality and makes the form seem significantly strange. And that's true throughout the work. As you look at the rest of it, you'll notice that it's neither day nor night. The orb in the sky is the moon, most certainly. In a later picture, the little puppy dog is barking in the middle of the canvas next to the tree. He actually isolates that in the moon and just paints the two of them dog barking at the moon. It's really cute. But it goes right back to this very work he painted like 10 years later. But the dog is barking at something, we're not quite sure what. And there are other sort of strange things going on. There's a tree planted. The bark is rather interesting when we get close at it. And there are these tile patio pieces that, again, look more like the tip of a rocket going into space right here, rather than tiles that you would see in perspective. This is coming up next. There's that tree, and look at the bark on that tree. Isn't that just the weirdest thing? It almost looks as if it's alive. Rather than being the inert and dead part of the tree that's on the outside of it, protected from the elements, it becomes this creepy, crawly surface like something out of the movie Alien, maybe. You know, where you're not sure if it's inert. The dog is barking at the moon in the upper right corner, and you'll notice that there's a set of footprints there that just seem to all of a sudden disappear. Right? All of these are sort of like the bits of a dream. You know, my wife in the morning, she and I will sometimes try to explain our dreams to each other. And sometimes they're kind of fun, and sometimes it's like, just stop. None of this makes any sense. You know? And that's the case here. We have that past that leads back to a maid doing a wash, I imagine. But the footprints just all of a sudden disappear. And 2, 4, 6, here, there's an odd number of them as well. So all of a sudden, whoever it was just took off, right? Jumped out, leaving one footprint behind. And then there's that idol, right? Can you see it right back here? A very strange idol figure. That's probably a female idol. Doesn't think have male genitalia, has breasts. But what's it doing there? You know, looking directly at you, the viewer. It has that sort of, I don't know what you want to say, mystical quality that dreams often have. You know, to pay attention to you in a kind of creepy way, right? There's our footprint leading up and to nowhere and our two-year-old puppy. The lines that we see that give these figures kind of a ground line to stand on. You know, part of me thinks, okay, it reminds me of Egyptian art or something, where there's always a ground line for something to stand on. But I don't think he's doing anything like that. I think he's just interrupting the sense of rational space everywhere that we look in the picture. There's that tree bark that is so odd looking, as if you're seeing things in it that might be like a skull from a profile, for example, where nothing is really exactly as it seems. Very anamorphic. And then as we look at the wall, this stucco wall of the barn on the left, you'll notice that it almost looks like a landscape painting, doesn't it? As if somebody has frescoed a landscape in the mountains, things in the mountainscape here, maybe clouds above or a second row of mountains. But in fact, there's meant to be the cracks and whatnot in the stucco of the wall. They're not intended to be landscape forms. But again, things shift before your eyes as you look at them. They become these really very odd forms. Even the moss that grows has this weird sort of like eels or something, you know, or seaweed like forms. And in fact, the interesting thing about the farm as a work by Miro is that many of the motifs we will see in his later works which get increasingly abstract, many of them are already right here. And you'll pull them out of this context and stick them to isolate them from narrative, right? Isolate them from meaning and stick them somewhere else, right? And those eyelash forms, they kind of look like eyelashes, don't they? Those cilia that are hanging down, that moss here, end up being totally divorced from this and show up in other places. But here they seem to reappear in parts of the tree as well. Some of the leaves of the tree have that same sort of odd shape. Again, all of this suggests some sort of deeper mystery involved, right? And this is at that period where surrealism hasn't really got going yet. He's in Paris, like the others who have come there, you know, from all over. Paris is Paris, right? The war's over. Why not? And it's the greatest place in the art world to be as an artist. So he's going just simply attracted, like Picasso was. Right? And there are people like Picasso there. He comes from Picasso's own hometown, you know. So there are these people to be found there. A community of artists. And he gets swept up into surrealism. So what would you call this work? It's not surrealist because there's no surrealism yet. Proto-surrealist? Right? Yeah. And it has to, I mean, I don't know the area, but I know Provence, which is kind of the same weather pattern, right? Right. And yes, that's overly baked earth with plants that are surviving, but not without a lot of work, like that corn plant in the foreground. Yeah. And even, I mean, corn is everywhere, right? And you can see the plant lower left corner. It's a corn plant as well, right? And the horse working the mill back there. It just, you know, it has that sense. But at the same time, even though he's describing many of the things that are there, he's giving it this air of mystery and strangeness. Exactly. As is this time of day that's neither day nor night. Right? The moon is out, the sky is somewhat dark, but it's not nighttime, nor is it really daytime. And that's, again, very dreamlike, isn't it? And when we looked at Max Ernst on Friday, we saw the two children threatened by a nightingale have that same kind of day for night quality, right, that we're seeing here. Well, after surrealism gets going, he begins to totally move in a totally abstract direction. So there's those forms, right? So the forms that were the moth on the side of the building now become this, titled Head of a Catalan Peasant. Now, how do you read the image? Most people think it's the face of a Catalan peasant, and that the cilia, those hanging tendrils, are like a mustache or a beard. And that's up in that upper right corner as well, right? You have those red, yellow, blue there. I hadn't read that. That's interesting. People see beyond his eye, right? This is a peasant's hat. In Catalonia in the 20s, I don't know if it's still true, but standard farm hat with it looks like a sister's side hat from Fort Bandy or something, but a red hat up there. And then it's already beginning to introduce other things. These flecks on the upper left corner, lower right corner, those are actually holes in the canvas. Right? So he's really thinking about the role of the artist and what he creates, but maybe also destroys, and how you can think about what surrealism was trying to do is to use the canvas to break through, to pierce something else, right? To find an avenue to something that's above reality or behind the appearance of things, right? When the idea of piercing the canvas is part of the process, can be every bit as important as the whole, actualizing it, doing the paint on that. And also in a very random pattern, right? It's not like going through it across the road. Oh, very much so. The Catalan flag, right? Did they paint it up like that?
Yeah, still vertically.
You see, the red stripe. Anyway. People read the two black elements as being the eyes in this as well as crow's feet off to the side. But there's something about it also that moves away from representing this world, something almost celestial, right? Like a constellation where you have those red, yellow, and blue in the upper right corner, like a rainbow of sorts. The star form, which will be a common form in Moreau's work. And again, and if you think about surrealism, right, above reality, right, moving away from the physical world. No, aren't the heavens, after all, something that we're really beyond understanding, right? And I think he's picking up on that very much. By the way, it's huge, too, like that across, like a good 3.5, 4 feet across. So again, the forms that he's putting down, even those whiskers or flag-like elements, have a sense of being automatically done, right? What Breton was saying about automatism, laying them down without knowing really where they're going, more like freely drawn lines than trying to actually describe them. But even the idea of the hat not being fully filled in, or the star being properly drawn. And these are all elements of surrealism that are coming into Miro's work. Another very large work, this one's almost 10 feet across, really huge. He eventually, as he's working his way into these surrealist ideas, begins to change the titles of the work to be increasingly simple. To a certain point, they just sometimes just become composition, or in this case, painting. And sometimes museums have given them a secondary title based on what Miro said he was painting, in order to help us distinguish between 100 different Miros that are called painting, right? In this case, circus horse. And the horse is, of course, the figure on your right, and the thing on your left, that large V shape, is, as Miro explains it, the circus master. Totally abstracted, with a whip. And in fact, this appears in many different Miro works, and the theme of the circus horse being controlled by the circus master can relate to this idea of the difference between wild and rational, right? And Moreau makes it even more obvious by other elements. The phallus of the horse, for example, painted bright red, right, adds to the idea that that rearing horse on the right is, in fact, more wild than that coming into taming. And then is the circus master, because the form of the circus master becomes this V shape. Is that meant to be a female characteristic? It appears as such in other Moreau paintings. Is this women controlling men? The battle between the sexes of sorts. But the circus is a theme that we see all the time in surrealist art. And partly it's because, if you think about a circus, it's a world where nothing is as it seems. Everything is playful. Everything has, clowns aren't really people, right? Elephants ride tricycles, things like that, right? Nothing does what it's supposed to do. You have these juxtapositions between things that you recognize and doing things that they're not supposed to do. And who's the person that gets that to happen? It's the circus master. It's the animal trainer. They are like a magician, making nature conform to what they want it to do rather than what it naturally does. And this made the circus for the surrealists an incredibly potent metaphor. And Moreau is not the only one who does this. In fact, Alexander Calder, those big mobiles, right? One of his earliest things that he did was a little wire sculpture that he called a circus that he could wind up. And the little figures would dance around. He would take it around Paris and make it to furniture. Make the circus work, make the circus work. Go make them dance. And he would light it up and these little figures would move. And it's gone now, right? It didn't survive. But this whole idea of this, the circus is this thing that is another world. It's a different world than the normal world, where the normal rules no longer apply. So what we see with the circus horse picture on the left is Moreau taking this next step where these disembodied forms that have been removed from any kind of descriptive nature or increasingly from descriptive nature are becoming also symbols of elements that humans share. Symbols of masculinity, symbols of femininity interacting within his canvas. And again, very little to distract from them with these randomly placed dots and sort of, is it a sperm-like form or a remora or what are those parasites that suck blood? A leech-like form, a yellow leech at the upper right. Stars become this constant metaphor. You can see where the automatic painting is coming into this, right? Totally abstracted forms that look as if you just rubbed into it. This is only about 2.5 feet tall, so if you imagine the difference, right, this would be about 6 feet by 6 right? Just so you have an idea. But certainly not hard to pick out the female forms here, right down to what appear to be stockings on the feet, but then that's violated by the fact that one of them ends in something that looks like a head at the very top, right? But shooting star, that's the thing in the lower right corner over here. This is the shooting star, right? But there's this figure now dancing sort of in the celestial realm as he's totally abstracted these forms. I've only started to like Moreau recently. When I was an undergrad, I found it incredibly difficult. Because there's something about it that's trying very, very hard to be childlike on a certain level, but at the same time complicated by these erotic overtones, right? The naked human figure, all of those V's that float around, other things that end up looking like male genitalia everywhere you look. I think it's consciously difficult, which is one of the things I think that's most fascinating about it in many ways, is this conscious difficultness. And the way in which a canvas that's like this looks like it's sort of the beginning of an idea, just these thinned out paints that are sort of just smeared rather than painted onto the surface. There's something very primal about it. And again, if you think about psychotherapy, I don't know if you've ever been, but you've read about it enough here and there. And in addition to dreams, the other thing that Freudian therapy says is, what happened to you when you were a kid? Can you go back and channel what it was like? What are some of your earliest memories? And with Miro painting in such a self-consciously simple way, and granted he is self-taught, right? He learned to paint when he was working out demons, recovering from a mental breakdown, right? But those forms that look incomplete, unfinished, and certainly unrefined, those are ways of, I think, channeling some of his deepest, earliest memories, but also connecting them to something greater, right? The idea of a shooting star. This one's up in Baltimore, the Baltimore Museum of Art, which is, just, like I said, I was really blown away with what a great collection it is. In 1938, he did a series of pictures he simply called portraits, but none of them are meant to be portraits of anybody. He just is, again, using these painting terms, right? Picture, painting, composition, portrait. Can you read it? When I first looked at it, I thought it was a sort of a head and shoulders bust-length portrait, right? With a big, massive head up here, sitting on a body down below, right? Lips, maybe, with that little butterfly form, eyes up here, But then it doesn't really work that way, because all of a sudden you start to realize what this is here. There's a pair of disembodied breasts, right? And he's separating the forms from each other and making them arranged on the canvas in a way that sort of violates our standard understanding. Some of the forms are very, very playful. This fish-like form, for example, down below, here, right? Flying through the air, decorating in a disjunctive manner that part of the canvas. This form down below here, this orange thing against a black square, with, again, those hair-like forms coming off of it, that's a form he uses often for female genitalia as well, right? In the same way that the V is used, too. So it's definitely meant to be a woman's portrait. And the placement of that down there also suggests the idea of a body with a head on top. And then there's also, I think, with his work, something kind of menacing as well. And this is something we see quite a bit in surrealist art, because the way that head opens up, it almost seems like it's opening like this. Right? Can you see that? The black bits on the sides are wings that have opened up. And the form down below, the thing that he uses as genitalia, looks like a Venus flytrap, right? Those things that eat bugs snap down on them. They open up and they look very inviting, and then they bite down. Right? These are themes, I think, that he's channeling into these works. But again, there's this idea of an open start. The outline of the different forms that you see, the black, film-like form that makes the body, seem as if they've been drawn unconsciously, automatically, and then filled in. They become the basis for something greater. And then you can see in the blue background on the upper right corner some of the same sort of swirling scratches, now scratching through the paint, that he was doing when he applied the black paint in the shooting star on the right. And again, these are from the same year, so that technique is there for both of them. Right. I have a nice detail or two of this as well, just so you can see it close up. And he is putting quite a bit of effort into some of the smaller forms that float around, right? And Gracie, can you see where you're Kandinsky, right? He moved to Paris in 1935, right, or so. Actually 31 or 32, but, right? He's there during this period, and in many ways, his work at this time is best defined as offshoot surrealism, right? And Miro is a huge touchstone for it, as are the forms in Calder mobiles. Also come directly out of this because they're floating in the air, just as he has many of these things suggest elements that soar through the sky, right? Miro is huge, art is huge, and so is Calder, right? I mean, it all fits together quite well. And in fact, you could easily divorce this form out and find it on your picture, you know? Maybe dancing upright instead. Oh, you mean are you talking about these scuffy bits down in here? Yeah. It's the same thing he's doing, I think, up above here, right? Yeah. I mean, he's really working the surface, but again, he's thinking outside the box, right? He's thinking about his role as a painter, not in the traditional manner, but in something really very, very different. I had the hardest time finding a really good slide of this, and believe me, this is the best one. It's in a private collection. He did a whole series of works in 1940 that he called constellations. And part of the reason that he started doing, well, let's see, where are we? Part of the reason he became so focused on heavenly bodies, right, constellations, shooting stars, whatnot, is because his home country of Spain was, in 1936, had entered into the Spanish Civil War, right, and this is a lead-up to World War II. It sort of breaks out there early on, even before the invasion of Poland. And he's sitting and looking at this from Paris, right, and seeing his home country ravaged by war, second time in 20 years. And he begins to turn to these celestial bodies as a way of escaping from the trauma of the world to something that's greater, right? Something that's metaphysical, something that's surreal. And so these works often have metaphors such as, firmament, you know, is the skies, right? The stars. And you can see our shooting star down below, blue, and how it intersects with other forms. And then they think of it more like an asteroid belt. And the title, The Ladder Brushed the Firmament, is actually kind of important for him, because he sees these as a place to escape to. The ladder is the connection between here and there. And in this case, the ladder isn't upright, but rather I think it's this form here. But sometimes it becomes rather obvious leading from earth to heaven, even though there may be no actual depiction of the earth, nor any actual depiction of heaven. There's even another ladder form here, another one down here. And we find these means of ascent, and painting is a way of ascending from this world to something better, something in the next world. But again, with automatic drawing everywhere. Lines that seem to wander without any forethought, without any advanced planning. Woman and girl in front of the sun. Right? Again, these wandering forms, these stains on the canvas, where he turpentined out some of the pigment so much that it doesn't really sit on the canvas, but rather stains into the canvas. You can see it quite clearly in the middle, that he's just sort of thrown some paint down and spread out, right? This area in here has spread out to the edges, has gone over and then sort of leaked into the sides of it. And then he's used that as the basis for drawing something else. And again, these forms that are sort of anamorphic, some of them look as if they're mouths, perhaps. Other parts look like male genitalia as well. These things are rife with that sort of eroticism, which again, I think for Freud, you know, when Freud tells us to cut past everything, it's all about sex. It's all about denial of accepting. And I think for Miro, that's certainly part of it as well. Interestingly, with this one, I didn't notice this at first until I saw it in person. There's this big glom of white paint immediately next to that form down below. Given the title of Woman and Little Girl, there's a splotch there next to all of the other paint that so stands out. And on top of that, it looks as if he sort of, through a straw perhaps, has spit some cobalt blue paint onto the top of it. And part of it is I think it's kind of icky in a way. And I don't really want to explain this much further, right? But I think you get what I mean, right? That if he's dealing with forms that are based on genitalia and divorced from putting the body back together, then this splotch of paint, white paint there, I think is intended to also have these sorts of overtones. That in many ways, what is he doing when he paints? He's throwing himself onto it in one way or another. Okay, we're not going to be able to finish up here, so let's just quickly talk about Tongyi. Again, we're going to get to Dali. But he's in this. Tongyi was also a self-taught painter. Began as a writer, was in Paris from a fairly early period. But many people suggest that more than Dali, he's the one that's responsible for this sort of surrealist dream landscape, where you have this strangely lit ground, usually with a light source you don't see, a light that makes some sense but isn't really consistent or rational, and then a sky that is neither night nor day. Almost looks like maybe something inside of an aquarium, especially with these floating forms that you see, some of which cast shadows, some of which have bug-like shapes. Others are simply paint on the surface of the canvas, like this zigzag over here, right? Denies the idea of any kind of space that he's creating. So it's really channeling this idea of a landscape where these elements that are unrecognizable, but I think pose something to Miro, float across that landscape. Now, people have been doing dream landscapes. This is nothing new, right? At the time that Tongyi is doing them, but he begins to sort of purify it and turn it into something sci-fi looking, like a set on the moon, right? A lunar landscape. And taking ideas that Max Ernst had worked with almost a decade earlier, where you can't tell the time of day, where it's this looming darkness. Tongyi channels that. So we'll look at him more, and we'll look at Dali at the end of this on Friday as we move forward from here to some Bauhaus painters, including Kandinsky, who are picked up by this, right? Kandinsky and Paul Klee. So we'll wrap up surrealism quickly on Friday and move into those Bauhaus painters. So again, if you came in late, I went over a big amount of new due dates, so if you need to see that, talk to me. They're all ready to tell you everything about it.